Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Content Workshop. Thank you so much for clicking on the video to give the podcast a listen. I wanted to give an intro to this video, unlike others, just because the first minute of this recording, my mic was actually muted within the recording software. We recorded the entire podcast. It's about an hour long, and I just didn't want to have to make Patrick redo the recording as a whole. So I wanted to just do this intro, giving some clarification on what happened, because after this intro, I'm just going to splice it right into the recording so you guys can listen to the podcast. Before I do that, I wanted to properly introduce Patrick, since that was the part of the recording that was originally muted. But Patrick Maloney, otherwise known as MaloneyMedia through his social media profiles, he is a freelance videographer, storyteller. He's done photography and design, and he's done it all basically. He has done video work for traditional sports brands like the FC Red Bulls, as well as other brands like Puma and Umbro. He has also done a lot of work with eSports teams, predominantly the Cavs Legion NBA 2K League team, as well as the Minnesota Timberwolves 2K League team as well. And they just won the championship for the 2K League this past season. So he's done a lot of work. He has a wide array of experiences and background, and I knew he would be a great addition to the podcast as a whole. Hearing his background, hearing his experiences, for anybody that's wanting to get into videography, design, any type of media as a whole, or just get into the esports industry, I know you'll be able to take some of the things he says and really put them to use in your own lives. So I can't wait for you all to listen to it. Again, thank you so much. Sorry for the different intro, but I just wanted to make sure that he got the introduction he deserved. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the podcast, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
My name's Patrick, like Sam had said. Um, I am 20 years old. I currently go to college in New Jersey. I go to Fairleigh Dickinson University. So I'm actually graduating at the end of this year, which I'm very excited about. But on the side, I also do freelance esports content creation, sort of like we've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just a really good time. I got into it at a really young age, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit deeper in the podcast, which is it's awesome. I love talking about like that side of me just because of how young I was
Mm-hmm.
during it. Um, and yeah, like I said, I'm 20 years old, just about to graduate. I do graphic design stuff. I do videography, editing, post production,
Mm-hmm.
photography, pretty much anything that has to do with multimedia. The only thing I haven't dabbled in is animation, which is my next sort of like deep dive is to learn how to do a bunch of motion graphic stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, that's pretty much all my specialties and stuff like that, and a little bit about myself.
Awesome. I appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like you just kind of alluded to, like you do a wide array of things, and most of the time when I've done these podcasts, it's easy for me to like tell, like, kind of pinpoint where someone started and be like, hey, you started with this company, like, just start from there and we'll go from there and just give me your
yeah,
experiences. But for you, it was a little bit harder. I was like, I don't know exactly how I'm gonna start his background,
yeah.
because I couldn't get a good gist from like where you had started because you had done so many different things. So for you, just to make it easy, like what was your first dive into, media as a whole, and where did you kind of get your start and how'd you go from there?
For sure. So I'll start back when I was literally 11 or 12 years old, honestly.
Okay.
So I was a little middle school kid who wanted to start a Call of Duty YouTube channel. So Call of Duty is like my main video game that I come from in esports,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I primarily followed for most of my life, even up to now. So I was making videos on Black Ops 1 on my PlayStation 3. I had a little Dazzle recorder, and I needed graphics for my YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't want to pay anyone to make the graphics for me. So I decided to just kind of download Photoshop and learn how to make it myself.
Okay.
So that was how I got interested in that. And once I started doing that, other people wanted me to do it for them, like some of my buddies that I had on the game. And that's sort of how I got into the whole multimedia, design creation with that. And it just grew from there. So I kept making videos for a couple years, and then I realized that I can be doing this for other people and put a lot more time into it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that brought me to like my first sort of job, I want to say, was with Team Elevate back in 2014. So at that
Okay.
time, I was 14, 15 years old. And yeah, that sort of got me into working with teams, working with esports organizations,
Mm-hmm.
and a little more on the traditional side of like a job, but still not fully like, making a career out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, I was 14, so I wasn't expecting to make a career out of anything at that point in my life.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about like, what I wanted to do in college, what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So it was a really good like jumping point, and it sort of gave me something to do on the side. Instead of playing video games and stuff like that, I was able to learn how to edit videos and how to, work around certain programs that are industry standard even to this day, which is
Mm-hmm.
great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, that was 6 years ago, if I'm doing my math correctly. Don't do math in public, but yeah. So I mean, Elevate's always been a kind of a notable org, especially previous Call of Duty titles, and at that time frame, I don't say it was maybe not their like ultimate height, but that was close to like when they were starting to get pretty big. So at your age, at 14, like to even be associated with an org like that,
Yeah.
I think it just shows like what people can do if you just like put the time in almost.
Yeah, it was awesome. So Elevate had their Call of Duty or this Counter-Strike team at that time as
Hmm.
well. And I had joined, and maybe after a year that I was in the organization, I was there for a total of 4 or 5 years, I believe. I can't remember exactly. And shortly after I joined, they actually dropped the Counter-Strike team and put a lot more into their Call of Duty team. And that's when they got that sort of god roster that I'm sure you know of with
Yeah,
Facento and all them on it.
yeah, that was Naga's
So
team. Like, yeah, that was a
Naga,
yep.
Aqua, yeah.
Hmm.
So that was a really cool era to be a part of for sure.
Okay, awesome. And so just starting out, what, because a lot of people were in the same boat that you were in at that point, is, what was your main focus and like what did you kind of focus on getting better and like what did you learn just start like what are the things that you just learned starting out that helped you like progress further quickly?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone can find out anything about anything on YouTube nowadays.
Yeah.
So I really learned how to use Premiere, and actually, I was using Sony Vegas at the time. So I
Okay.
learned how to edit in Sony Vegas just on YouTube videos and stuff like that. And then I would go to Twitter and I would reach out to certain people who were a part of the esports scene.
Hmm.
And I reached out to someone by the name of Jordan King, who's no longer with Elevate, but he'll come up later in my stories.
Yeah.
And I reached out to him, and he ended up getting me the job to edit. And I just sort of had to prove myself as we went on. It was like a non-paid gig, but
Hmm.
it was great to help me grow. So taking those non-paid gigs initially is great, as long as you make sure that you're growing yourself and the brand that you're working for is growing.
Okay. Yeah. And so how long did you work with Elevate exactly?
Yeah, so I believe it was 4 years. It might have been closer to 5 now that I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
But yeah, it was 4 to 5 years.
It's pretty long. It was a long tenure in esports for anybody, whether you're doing professional or just like side work. I mean, 4 to 5 years is honestly like 10 years in a normal job, to be completely honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't active like for the full 4 years.
Hmm.
There was maybe a year that I was, working on a video every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks occasionally, but I was still doing stuff. So
Okay, awesome. And obviously, like looking at like I have your I guess your media page pulled up beside me as we're doing this, and like
yeah.
you have I would say almost 20 brands. So, were you doing side work with other brands at that time, or have you did you move on and then start doing more freelance work, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so at that time, I was really only focused on Elevate. I was keeping my horizon, open and making sure I could allow anyone who wanted to come in to come in.
Mm-hmm.
But that individual that I named before, Jordan King, one of the people I can really be grateful for in the esports community because he really gave me almost everything that I have now.
Yeah.
He moved on to work at Tempo Storm. He got a full-time position at Tempo Storm,
Okay.
and that sort of brought me over to there. And as soon as I got into Tempo Storm, that opened up so many different opportunities just because of how big they are in Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
So now I had a Call of Duty team on my back, and I had a Hearthstone team on my back, which is two very big communities that, when brought together, can open up a lot of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So those other brands, like a lot of the other brands that are on my website and stuff like that, are more recent, probably the past year, maybe 2 years that I've worked with them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all been freelance work for those. So like the people that you see, like Puma, Umbro, stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
all in the past 2 years, I'd say.
Well, that's awesome though. I mean, even freelance work. I mean, a lot of people I think are always curious of like, how do I even like, where do I like? Let's say they haven't worked for a few years, like you have. They've gotten the basics, the fundamentals down. They're like, how do I even like reach out to these brands? Like, how do I even make myself available for these brands? So, what processes you go through, even if it's a small activation, like one time thing? Like, what processes did you go through to work with the companies like Red Bull, like Puma, like Umbro, and things of that nature?
Of course. So I think it's two main things, really.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's talking to people if you go to events. So if you go to a gaming event, make sure you're literally, bring a stack of business cards. I had business cards made when I was 15 years old. So bring a stack of them, hand them out to whoever, make sure that they know who you are, what you can do. Even if you're young, it doesn't matter. People will see talent and they'll respect talent, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Twitter is huge. Twitter is so big for freelancers and activating that side of it
Mm-hmm.
because all brands will tweet out whenever they need a job position. Almost all brands will.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see someone say, "Hey, I need a graphic designer for this," you simply DM them, and if they like your work, then they'll hire you. It's as easy as that. So just make sure your portfolio is always on top of whatever you're working on, and it's the best that it could possibly be. And then that will, lead you to getting as many freelance jobs as your work will, attest for.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because even for me, like me and you have two completely different lanes. You are a creator, I'm a marketer, so to speak. But even as a marketer, I
Mhm.
can hand out business cards. I can tell people I went to I have a 4 year degree in digital marketing, things of that nature. But at the same time, that person's doing stuff already at the event, like they're already
Yeah.
focused on whatever it is. Like if I'm gonna use a huge example, if I walked up to Hector,
Mhm.
Hex, and I'm like, hey man, like I can do this, and this for you. He's like, I see you and like I respect you, but at the same time I'm doing this, and this and this. Like I'll take your
Exactly.
card, but like I'm bringing that up, like what you said with social media. Social media is a way, like even as a marketer, like I can make a media landing page where I can show people like decks I've made. Like it's just the easiest way to like display yourself. So you're given that digital business card of like, hey, here's everything I can do in like 10 seconds. Like you can use
Absolutely.
it's no tax on you as an employer. You just make one click and look at everything I got.
Yeah.
So social media definitely is something I think is a lot. It makes it a lot easier for. I mean, yes, it's muddy because there's a lot of creators out there, but I think it makes it a lot easier for people to get noticed at a young
Mhm.
age, like yourself. Just being able to display your talent. I mean, even if you make a video on your own, you're like concept work for X. I mean, concept work for this company, and you tag
Yeah.
them. One person on that company sees it and likes it, then boom, you have a freelance opportunity, basically.
Yeah, so that's funny you say that actually because the whole I'm sure you're familiar with G Fuel photographers and
Oh
that
yeah.
whole era of people posting pictures of G Fuel,
Hmm.
shaker cups, the tubs and stuff like that. So I was actually big into that as well, and that was something that definitely helped get my reach out there because a company like G Fuel would see that and retweet it, and now G Fuel has, I think, I might be wrong, but they have like 1.2 million followers or something crazy like that.
Hmm.
So they're really up there, and they have big people like Hex, like a bunch of big names in the community following them. So if they retweet that and someone like Hex sees those pictures and he loves those pictures, he might DM you. He might be inclined to DM you. And
Yep.
not only will he click on the Twitter profile and see your work on it and see what you've done in the past, but he'll also see a side of your personality, which is important because if you're going to an event to network in any job field, you might have 10 seconds to 20 seconds to really pitch yourself and to really
Hmm.
share who you are as a person. But on Twitter, they can scroll through your Twitter as long as they want to.
Yep.
So that's why keeping your social media like professional at all times is very important. That's something that they teach you in, any part of your life. I'm sure they're teaching it even in high school now because
Yeah.
of how
Exactly.
important it really is. So yeah, they can really get a better glimpse of who you are as a person, which is important because they want to hire someone who's personable. They want to hire someone who, they can really bounce ideas off of, especially with content creation.
Yep. And if you do it the right way, like you're talking about, I mean, if you make that initial contact online, like even if they don't hire you, then when you do hand that business card out at like or Minnesota, CDL Minnesota, they can be like, hey, I saw your account was retweeted by G Fuel. That's you, right? And you're like, yeah. And that's an instant like rapport building, like in with those people. And now you're not having to elevator pitch yourself in 20 seconds. Now you actually probably have a legit 10-minute conversation with that person, and now
Exactly.
it's not like you're trying to sell yourself. You're just trying to give context to what they've already seen, which is really nice. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh-huh. So yeah, a lot of freelance work. So I guess the one question I wanted to ask you, I thought would be really applicable to you is, what differences or your unique aspects have you seen in media production or whatever media as a whole in non-esports related activations that you've done versus esports, like comparisons and contrasts, like what have you seen as a creator?
Yeah, for sure. So this was a really cool question that I thought I could answer because I do have both sides of it. Seeing a lot of
Mm-hmm.
what goes on with the New York Red Bulls because I have done some work for them, and seeing a lot of what goes on with the more traditional esports sides.
Yep.
So New York Red Bulls have two esports players now. One is Mike LaBelle, and one is George Adamu,
Mm-hmm.
who recently became, I think, yeah, he came second place. He was runner up in EMLS Philly, which was a great event.
Mm-hmm.
So they do a lot of stuff very similar to traditional esports, which I'm very thankful for because they are coming into the scene as a traditional sports team
Mm-hmm.
and they don't really want to change anything, which sort of leaves that staple and that standard, the industry standard, into esports because we really grew. I say we as like I'm one who really grew esports, but the whole esports community really grew
Yeah.
as a unit and came up together. And people like Robert Rogers
Mm-hmm.
from 100 Thieves now, he was on Optic, really helped put a staple into documentary series. So did Hitch with Vision.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something really huge that I'd like to see become more into the traditional sports side of things. That hasn't really happened yet.
Yeah.
But I think that once that does happen in places like New York Red Bulls, or I also do some work in the 2K League. So once that happens in the 2K League, I think it'll be, really top notch content that comes out of it. The 2K League is a little more better about using those docu-series. They have a couple individuals in the studio and outside of the studio who will travel to the players' houses wherever they live in the world, and they'll even go, to Europe, to Germany, somewhere in England, wherever, to get this content, to really push to get these documentary type contents. Because at the end of the day,
Hmm.
the personality is really what it's all about in esports, which it's important to capture that as raw as possible and as natural as possible.
Exactly.
So yeah, I just think
Okay.
it's really cool that the 2K League is making a push towards doing that more, and I'd really like to see other traditional sports teams who have esports activations do that as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if you've watched yet, but the campaign for the CDO, I don't know if you've watched those videos yet with the
I
Huntsman.
ha- yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
Okay, yeah, if you get a chance, like they're doing a docu series, obviously, like the lead up to CDO Minnesota through the Huntsman's team with Scump and Formal and all them, and
Yeah.
it's legit. Like it's narrated. I haven't confirmed this, but I'm pretty sure it's narrated by the same guy who does all the ESPN documentaries, like
Oh
the
wow.
outside the line documentaries. I'm pretty sure it sounds like the exact same dude.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they got him. Which
Even
is
if it's not him, that's still incredible
yeah,
that
it
they have
sounds
someone
like
that's
him.
like
Yep.
very professional like that.
And
Yeah.
it looks like an outside the lines documentary. And the funny thing of I always think docuseries are funny because obviously they're amazing. When you think about them like conceptually, like as a creator, like they're actually like not that like extravagant or different. Like 20 minutes of
No.
that documentary is freaking Scump like taking his dog out and like talking to his girlfriend about getting flowers for his mom. Like super, like when you think about it conceptually, it's like why would someone care? But people do care. Like
Exactly.
that's what they
Yeah.
want to see because people, especially with our generation, you look at the psych. It's like I'm a digital marketing major, but I've also taken some just basic psychology classes and like how our generation consumes content and how we like to like take things in is way different than previous generations. Like we
Mhm.
want that context. So I think going to your point about how we have docuseries and traditional sports don't have it as much, I think that's a generational thing because you have younger audience that the players are probably more willing to do it. They're
Yeah.
not older. They don't have like 3 kids and a wife type thing. Like it's a lot easier for them to let people be in their lives a little bit more behind the scenes.
Yeah. And
But I
as our generation goes into traditional sports and being hired for these esports positions, like someone like Helena, who we were talking about a little earlier off the recording,
mhm.
she really brought a whole new perspective to content in traditional sports teams. Even though it is an esports team, I'm sure the Cavaliers love what she has brought. I'm almost positive about that
Oh yeah,
because
100%. Hmm.
because it is that generational gap where they might not have thought of some of the things that she thought of because she's homegrown in the scene.
Yep.
She was a part of Panda. She's definitely like one of the most homegrown people that could be hired into an outside position. So
Yeah.
I definitely agree with your generational comment.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this will go live by the time Helena's goes live, obviously. And we talked about that. If you're listening to it, is when she first got hired, like she's in that room with, all the people from the Cavs, like the actual Cavs. And I was like, there had to be a whole lot of humility going on along there because, like, the Cavs were suggesting all this stuff, and not all of it was bad. But she was like, look, like, you guys don't get how this scene works. It's different. Like, yes, there
Yeah.
are some things that you can bring to the table. She said she's learned a lot, especially from like a legal side and like how things operate. But at the same time, she was like, we do, if you try to do it the same way you do it for the Cavs, it's not going to work. Like you need to learn how esports works a little bit. And she said there was a lot when she first got hired on, there was a lot of sit down conversations of like, here's how it should be done. And there was a lot of humility in the room, basically with both sides learning from each other. So I
Mhm.
do agree with your point on that as a whole.
Of
Um,
course.
so with your freelancing work and everything you've done, I would say like, what is, because you said you've done a ton of stuff. Like, what is your favorite thing to do as a whole, um, content wise? I guess the best way to put it.
Yeah, so my favorite thing is definitely making more like recap videos. So
Mm-hmm.
if I cover an event, making a recap video from that is always awesome. Even if it's more of like a vlog style. I don't like calling it a vlog because like, at the end of the day, I'm shooting what I like to call professional B-roll for these videos and stuff like that. But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, they go up on a video. They're called a vlog. That's that. Um, but so if I go to the 2K League games, I worked for the Minnesota Timberwolves game, T-Wolves Gaming, as I
Mm-hmm.
had to rep in the podcast today
Yeah.
for those who are seeing it. Um, and I would record just on a day, or if we went to a tournament, I would record the tournament. Like we went to one in Orlando over this past summer, and I recorded a whole recap from each day of the tournament, and that
Mm-hmm.
was so exciting to me. I did work like a like a racehorse on those because I would shoot during the day, go back, edit until 4 in the morning ish,
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 in the morning, and then have to have it ready for an upload the next day. Just because of how important the timing is of these videos,
Mm-hmm.
people see the tournament going on and they see these people playing video games, but they don't see what they're doing when they're not playing video games,
Yeah.
which that casual side is, super important, super awesome. So I have a love hate relationship with the timeliness of things and having to get it up almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It just creates for such a different side of content. So that's definitely my favorite thing to do is those sort of recap videos from different events.
Yeah, recap videos are good, and I think they're one of the more difficult things to shoot as a creator and also kind of just direct as a player and coach, is because like some players and coaches don't want that to be seen because if they are having arguments or they are talking about things like esports fans tend to take that out of context a lot.
Yeah.
I remember when Hunter Thieves was doing their stuff with their COD team and showing their VOD reviews and stuff like that during the events. Like, not everybody, but some people were taking that of like, oh, the team's falling apart. Like, look at this, they can't
Yeah.
handle it. Like, and so it's got to be difficult. Like, I've always thought it was crazy. Like, one of my top 5 favorite content pieces of all time is when Optic lost that champs that they were supposed to win really bad. Like the iconic
Yeah.
picture of
Yeah.
Formal like looking into his hands. Like, as a
That was an
creator,
incredible piece. Yeah.
it would be an
It's
incredible piece, but it's got to be difficult as a videographer and as a storyteller to sit there because you're like I know I wouldn't want to be filmed. I'd be like,
of
dude,
course.
get out of my face, like.
Of
And so
course.
it's got to be difficult because you're like you have to capture the hard moments and you have to capture the moments that no one around you really wants to capture at that time. But looking back on it, like I'm sure all those guys now look back on it like, damn, like I'm glad that moment got caught, or I'm glad I can look back on that moment and see it every time because it just
Yeah.
fuels them for later on. But that's got to going back to your recap side of things. If it's ever in that context, it's got to be difficult to kind of show
Yes.
and store and tell the hard moments, basically.
Yeah, the tension in the room after a loss is incredible. It's like almost overwhelming. And sometimes I'll like most of the time actually I'll go in and record for like a couple minutes, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even just a couple seconds, and then I'll leave just because the tension is so high. Everyone's very emotional. A lot of people, like you said, will just be like face down. Nobody really wants to look at the camera, but that's the side of esports that people want to see.
Yep.
People will see, after the Yankees lose a game, they'll walk off the field and they'll be, upset with each other. They won't be like in the happiest spirits, and people still see that on live TV. So I feel like that's important to capture, definitely for esports teams. And I don't know, like you said with the Call of Duty piece with the optic piece, it was just that was such an incredible moment to capture too, because now they get to look back on that and they
Mm-hmm.
say, oh wow, this is how I felt when I lost. Maybe let's not do that again, right?
Yep.
Or maybe next time I do lose, be in a little bit of a higher spirits about it and, sort of be in a bounce back. Let's get that next time, because I don't want all of my supporters who see me in these videos to be like, hanging their head the same way I did. It
Mm-hmm.
sort of should be more of a bounce back scenario.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I can't admit, like you mentioned Roger in the past. Like I've seen him at events like recording certain things. It just yeah, it's probably it's a lot of finesse you have to do as a creator when you're recording events as a whole. Like knowing when to be in. I don't want to say in their face because you're not in their face, but you know what I mean. Like just being in that same environment and like wanting to film the best possible content you can, but at the same time also giving the players the respect they should have as players.
Of course.
And that goes back to the organization and the coaches as a whole, like kind of bringing up that like, hey guys, this dude's doing his job, like let him do it. Like you guys are trying to do your job, he's trying to do his job. Like it's almost like they have to know that going into it, but at the same time, it's got to be difficult as a creator as a whole to do that.
Yeah, it's a really fine line at the end of the day that sometimes you cross and sometimes you don't, and that's okay, because at the end of the day you have to get the best content that you can, because that's really what sells and that's what people want to see. Besides the whole competing part, the
Mm.
content I'd say is the next best thing. So
Yeah, I agree. And I think one other thing that, and you've probably seen this when you did photography for like NBA teams and stuff like that, and the Red Bulls is there's a line that's in traditional sports just because of the way the fields are. Like to be
yeah,
completely honest, the way the playing field is, like there's a imaginary line, like you're not getting but so close to those guys at any point in time. Whereas in esports, like even when they're on main stages, there's still not a line really. Like if you have a media pass, like they don't let people on main stages as much in the CDL anymore. But at the same time, like there's way less of a physical barrier in esports than there is in traditional sports. Like traditional sports, even when you're in the locker room, you can only get it so close to those guys just based off how much is around them, basically.
Yeah, so of course in traditional sports you'll have your pass, your media pass for whatever sort of team you're shooting for,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll allow you to go to certain places. So if you work directly for the team, that most likely means you get to go anywhere you want. You know, in home locker room, away locker room, get whatever sort of footage you need to get.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even with that allowance, it's also that imaginary line is still there.
Yeah.
So esports teams or esports events are getting a lot more protective
Yeah.
over who's on the main stage, like you had said. Even in places like the EMLS, which isn't the biggest competition in the world, but it's still an esports competition that wants to remain professional, especially on their live broadcast, which is really what it's all about. They don't want a million people with cameras up on stage,
Mm-hmm.
pressing it into people's faces to the point where the broadcast can't even see it. So esports events are getting harder to shoot for sure because of
Mm-hmm.
that, but it's understandable as to why they're doing it.
Yeah, and hopefully they can put implementations. Like I'm pretty sure 100 Thieves did this last year when they're in the Call of Duty World League. Is if Activision or MLG or whoever's hosting the event will let the teams that maybe are on main stage like have excerpts of the broadcast, like allow that media to be processed out to other people, because you could tell when they were switching to like the live broadcast. So which I like from a kind of flow perspective is like you see the behind the scenes and it goes to the broadcast. See the behind the scenes goes to the broadcast. So you kind of see like it's almost like you're getting two purviews at the same time, which is really
Yeah,
nice. So as long as the attorney hosters and the overall devs allow that to happen, then it won't be as big of a deal, even if they do put barriers on it.
yeah, I agree 100%.
But on that note, as far as challenges, I'm gonna have a two-part question for you because of your wide variety of experiences. What challenges have you came across in a non-esports realm? Like, what things have you came across that you had to overcome or get through, and then what challenges you face in the esports side of things?
Yeah, sure. So in a non-esports realm, my work was primarily with the New York Red Bulls. So I
Mm-hmm.
would, go to the games occasionally and try to capture some content for their social media team. And I'm happy to say that I haven't come across a lot of challenges there because, I didn't want to push my limits, but I also did try to push my limits. I was down at the field whenever I was at the games,
Mm-hmm.
just because I wanted to get pictures for myself, for my portfolio, and I also wanted to get pictures for the social media team.
Mm-hmm.
Or like little video clips, whatever it may be. But yeah, there weren't really too many challenges. Maybe some weird looks. I know I went with Mike LaBelle to the Philadelphia Union playoff game
Mm-hmm.
this past MLS season, not EMLS. So this is traditional soccer,
Mm-hmm.
professional soccer, and man, those Philly fans are ruthless. I don't know if you know anything about Philly sports fans,
Well,
but
yeah, I'm a Redskins fan in the NFL, so I know all about like Philadelphia Eagle fans. It's a
okay,
lot.
good. So
Yep.
we're on the same page then. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Awesome. So we both have a mutual hatred for Philly fans.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, they were definitely ruthless, and not only were they ruthless, but the staff working at the event, it was insane. I was shooting on the field, just trying to get some B-roll for. We were making a vlog for Michael Bell. He's the professional FIFA player for the
Mm-hmm.
New York Red Bulls, and they were playing the New York Red Bulls in the first round of the playoffs. And I was just trying to capture some B-roll. I went down to the field. I had a press pass to go down on the field, so like I wasn't, pushing my limits. I wasn't crossing any boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and they tried escorting me out of the arena of Talent Energy Stadium. So I sort of looked at the guy and I'm like, I know you see this pass right here. Like, what's good? And then Mike was talking to one of his buddies who was also working there. And luckily, we just talked to the security guard and got things sorted out. But simply because I was wearing New York Red Bulls jacket, I had New York Red Bulls pants on. I was all decked out. They didn't want to allow me down on the pitch, so that
Wow,
was pretty
that's crazy.
incredible to see. Yeah, and to sort of get turned away from something like that is really demotivating to shoot other content there
Mm-hmm.
because once you get it's like sort of asking for forgiveness instead of asking for permission,
Mm-hmm.
which I love, and I definitely live by that as a videographer and photographer, and so should any aspiring videographer or photographer
Mm-hmm.
listening to this. Don't ask for forgiveness, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
because you may cross a boundary once, get an amazing shot, and then all you have to do is say sorry, and it's over. But you
Mm-hmm.
got that shot. That's what's important. Um, so I'm glad I did that. I have no regrets towards it, but it was just kind of weird to be turned away from that. On an esports side, I don't think there were any really challenges on the esports side. I mean, of course, access to the main stage is always extremely difficult,
Mm-hmm.
but that's why they make longer range lenses. That's why they make nicer lenses with a lower aperture that also have a good focal length, a good
Mm-hmm.
zoom length. So it's really about working with what you have in esports, just because of how new it is and how quickly the growth is with all the events.
Mm-hmm.
So just make sure you work with what you got.
Okay, awesome. That's an interesting point. One thing you just said that kind of triggered my memory is, and I didn't ask my buddy Dylan. I did another podcast with another guy who done stuff for UMG, and he does like resorts, and he goes
Okay,
5-star resorts, and he does video work for them.
cool.
Travels all around the world. But I didn't even ask him this. Is like, what is in your gear bag? Because I know you guys have to have so much different stuff. Like it's got to be. Because like you don't. I'm sure you've had times at events where like you're like, I don't need this, and then you get there, you're like, shit, I should have brought that. Like
Yeah.
there's because with you it's not just the camera, it's not just the video, like it's all these like add-ons and things you need to put on your camera for any situation, for its lighting or distance, like you just said. Like there's
Of
3 different
course.
lenses you have to take depending on what you're doing. So like what's in your how long does it typically get you to make that gear bag, and like what is typically in it for a normal event that you do?
Yeah, so I actually really like this question. So a gear bag will look different for whatever I'm shooting, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lens. I have two lenses that I primarily switch between. I have one that's a smaller zoom length with a bigger aperture, or less of an aperture.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, and then I have one that's more of a zoom length with more of an aperture. So I will really switch between those two, and like depends on what I'm shooting. If I know I'm going there to shoot video, I will bring my Sony lens just because that does have image stabilization, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll pack that away for that. But sometimes my bag will look like, completely full. It'll be like, 50 pounds of like my stabilizer, a bunch of different batteries, a bunch of different lenses. And other times it's just me pulling up with, a camera handheld with one lens on it.
Okay.
So it depends on, how casual the event is, what they allow you to bring in the event as well. So, some events don't have don't allow you to use a backstage area to leave your stuff, and you don't want to be walking around with a backpack all day and stuff like that. So sometimes that's a little limiting to what you want to carry around with you
Mm-hmm.
throughout the day, because those days can be long. Sometimes they're 15, 16-hour days
Yeah,
at the
exactly.
end of it. So it's batteries. I have a DJI Ronin, which is heavy as all when it comes down to it when I put it
Oh yeah.
together. Yeah, so that I'll bring with me wherever I can. If I know I'm doing video, especially, I'll bring that with me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, other than that, it's just a bunch of batteries, a lot of memory cards. You have to bring your laptop everywhere because you could fill up a memory card like that and not even know.
Yeah.
So just being able to dump that into an external hard drive, which I
Mm-hmm.
also have 3 of that I bring wherever I go. So
Wow,
it's
that's
just really
that's
filling up that
insane.
backpack as much as you can. Yeah, stuffing it all in there.
Yeah, I didn't even. I a long time ago. So I'm 26 now. When I was 19, I worked at Best Buy and I worked in the camera section. And I actually gave a crap. Like I actually like try to learn a little bit about like, so I didn't
Yeah,
just seem
yeah,
like a guy. It's like, oh, I guess it's over here type guy. I actually wanted to like give people advice and stuff. And learning all of that, I didn't realize like all what goes in. Like how one having to learn just your own camera, like all the settings and like best practices, but also all the add-ons, like you're talking about, all the batteries, like memory cards, everything like that.
yeah,
It
yeah.
adds up.
Microphone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
microphone adds up quickly, and I have a lot of respect for people who use high end DSLRs and stuff like that, because it takes so long. Like you said earlier, YouTube University is the best university in the world. Like
of course. Yeah,
I've heard that now from, I'd say, 5 out of 6 of the people I've recorded. So,
yeah,
but at the same time, like it takes a long time to hone in and know what you need when you need it, type thing, and be
absolutely.
able to do it efficiently. Because like you may have everything, but if you're not operating it the most efficient way, like you could miss a shot that you're supposed to get or something like that. So you have to know
Exactly.
how to use it
And that's
quickly.
daunting to miss a shot like an important shot like that, because you're really supposed to be capturing the feel of the event and the essence of the event for people that are able to make it out to it. So if
Hmm.
you miss that one shot that maybe is like the capture moment that wraps up everything into one picture or one
Hmm.
video clip that can make the people at home really feel like they're there, then
Hmm.
that's sort of keeps you up at night.
Yeah,
Can't really
exactly.
can't really recover from that. So it's important to make sure you're always prepared for whatever may come.
Hmm.
Dead battery, memory card, whatever it is.
Have you ever had any horror stories where you're like, oh, this, like anything that went wrong? Because I'm sure
Yeah,
everybody's had one, and it's funny to hear those. I don't know if you have anyone you wanted to share.
yeah.
Anything like
So
that.
I'll actually I'll give a little secret scoop that I might not be able to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. So I work as a photographer for my university as well that I'm at, Fairleigh
Yeah.
Dickinson University. And it's a very historical campus in central New Jersey. If anyone knows about it, there's a huge Vanderbilt mansion that looks like it's straight out of like a movie set. So movies actually use it as a set. So I won't say what movie was there, but there was a movie there
Hmm.
2 months ago in early November, and they were shooting. It was a very important cast line, very big cast line that was shooting there. And I brought my camera to go capture some pictures of the set. They sort of revamped this mansion that we
Hmm.
use for classes into a movie set. So, and it had to look like Chicago in the mid 1900s, early 1900s. I can't really remember.
Mm-hmm.
And my camera, for some reason, locked up as soon as I went to go shoot.
Oh, that's
And
terrible.
yeah, I didn't know what was wrong with it. I didn't know why it wasn't letting me shoot. And I ended up having to actually bring it to a camera store to get it fixed. Luckily, the people that I work for, the PR at Fairleigh Dickinson University, had an extra camera I could use. But then I had to go relearn that camera. It was a camera that I had in the past, but I had to learn, all the settings on it, all the ins and outs of it in 30 seconds to
Yeah.
try and capture this very important moment that was only there for 2 days. And we had, I think, 30 minutes that they allowed us on the set to go shoot for. So I
Wow.
sprinted back to the office, which is probably like a 10-minute walk. It took me like 5 minutes to get there. I'm not that fast, I know. um, and yeah, it was crazy, but we got it done. We got the shots, which is what's important.
That's good. And at least it was something where it wasn't like your fault. It was just like a freak accident thing. But
Of course, yeah, but yeah, it's still something that keeps you up at night, which is not always fun. So
that's crazy. Well,
yeah,
on a good note, though, I wanted to ask you, and again, this is that question I wish I asked prior people, but like, what was your favorite event that you've ever covered from a media standpoint? Like, it can be photography, it can be video work, whatever you want to talk about. But what was your
sure.
favorite overall event?
So my favorite overall event, the most unique event I ever covered was the Philly game that I was
Mm-hmm.
just telling you about, the Philadelphia Union game, just because of how unique the environment was, and it's something I tell everybody that it was just so crazy. It's one of those stories that you'll keep with you forever.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite event had to be the EMLS Cup last year, which was in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So it was right outside of PAX East. It was maybe 10 minutes from the PAX East venue in downtown Boston, and the venue that they got was like inside of a church,
Mm-hmm.
and it was beautiful. It was an incredible stage area, incredible setup. They had so much for people to do out on the sides, but it wasn't so big that I could still see my friend go across the room and go talk to someone else, and I could still see where he is. So
Mm-hmm.
it's still small and like tight, but it could fit probably like 300, 400 people, which I thought was awesome. And they really did pack the house out for the finals. It was a great event. I also love the city of Boston, so maybe I'm a little biased there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was definitely my favorite event to shoot. It was exhilarating watching the matches go down, because I had a little more of an emotional attachment to the players at that point because I had been to two other events before that,
Mm-hmm.
to watch them compete. So I don't know. It was just a cool event to be at. I think that was definitely my favorite so far.
Yeah, the small events are definitely nice to go to. You kind of get more of like a closer feel with the people around you, and then also
Yeah,
as a creator, like it's a lot easier for you to capture the moments you want to capture because you're not like sprinting across the venue. Like when you go to MLG Anaheim or London, and it's split between 3 rooms, and it's a 150-yard walk down to where the players are hanging out versus like where they're playing. Like
yeah,
that can get frustrating as a creator for sure to try to cover as a whole. That's really interesting. I've never been to any EMLS. Like I told Helena, like esports is so big and there's so many different things. Like it's
yeah.
almost impossible to be a fan of every esport. It really is because
But,
you would literally be just be glued to your computer for 14 hours a day. Like
yeah,
if you watch just CS:GO, League of Legends, and Call of Duty events, that's pretty much all your brain could consume, in my opinion.
yeah, that's pretty
Um,
much the cap on that. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Because I've told her I felt bad that I hadn't watched any of the 2K League, but it's not because I don't like 2K. I played 2K growing up my whole life. I just look into so much other stuff. I haven't had time to sit down and learn the esport because I don't like just casually viewing esports. I'm sure you feel the same way. Like I like to know the players, know the
yeah.
ins and
You want to
outs of
learn
the
what you're
community.
watching. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. So that I have to check out the EMLS stuff a little bit too
Yeah,
and
hey,
see
come
what's
to
going
some
on.
2K League games this season too.
Yeah, I totally like I'm a Cavs Legion fan now, so
Awesome.
I'll be watching their stuff a little
I'll hide
bit.
this. Hide
Yeah,
this from
no,
you.
you're good. No, no, I like the. So I've never watched Timberwolves E League team or 2K team. I have watched obviously the regular team because um, they were one of my. I like small market NBA teams a lot. Like I'm a Boston Celtics fan technically, but outside the Celtics, I like small market teams just because I don't know. I just like it better. So I have
Right.
watched the regular Minnesota Timberwolves a lot.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
their
go ahead.
esports team definitely, they're something special. They won the championship last year, so
Yeah, I
if
did
you can
see
make
that.
it out to a game to watch any team really in the 2K League, it's awesome. It's a great environment over there.
Yeah, exactly. I'll definitely be watching those. So as you go forward, I guess the best way to frame this question, because I always like ask people like, what is your future goals and aspirations as a creator, and I always feel guilty asking people that question because your go-to answer is I just want to keep growing what I'm doing right now. You know what I mean? Like I want to work
Yeah.
with the people I'm working right now. But to the best you can answer that, like ideally, where do you want to go as a storyteller, like as a creator in the esports space, out of the esports space, wherever you want to go with it? What is your ideal kind of career progression as it goes
Of
forward?
course. So I started out with photography, or I started out with graphic design rather,
Mm-hmm.
moved into photography, sort of got the hang of both of those things. And over the past 2 years, I've been focusing on video.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely want to grow as a videographer and as a storyteller, and sort of do more stuff outside of esports, but also inside esports. So that's why I love the freelance position because I can work for places such as Laced Up. So Laced Up is a sneaker reselling store
Mm-hmm.
in the New York area, and they also had a store out in Hollywood, I think, earlier last year. So they do a lot of like the hype beast, Supreme, Yeezy sort of reselling, and I have the privilege of filming episodes for their new show that they're releasing,
Mm-hmm.
which is great because it's something different. It adds like a curveball to what I'm filming, and it helps me grow as a videographer and sort
Mm-hmm.
of bring what I'm learning from shooting that into esports and combine those two talents, or not talents, but those two events that I'm shooting, and share what I've learned from both.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely want to grow in and outside of esports. I'd like to do a lot more outside because most of the work that I do right now is inside. So really just growing as a video producer, outside.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I say that, and I didn't even think about this till like a quarter of the way through your answer is like you're 20. So
Yeah.
like
I
obviously
want to
like
graduate too. That's the
yeah,
goal too.
yeah,
I gotta
exactly.
graduate
It's not like you're this like 30-year-old dude that's like trying to think of like what his last step's gonna be, so to speak, in esports or out of esports. But like your like I'm 6 years older than you, so like at 20 years old, I'm glad that you're so focused on it because at 20 years old, I've told a lot of people this like personally, like I didn't know what I wanted to do until like this year. Like this year, I finally was like I want to do esports full time. Like that's what I
Yeah,
want to do. But at 20, I was like I have no clue what I want to do. So
that's fair.
um, it's nice to hear somebody that can at least has like a route they want to take. It may not be the same route 10 years from now, but it's a route that
Yeah,
they want to take as a
absolutely.
whole. But on that note, even as a younger person in the scene, you actually would be more suited to answer this question is what advice would you give? It's a two-part question. What advice would you give people that just starting out in videography, photography design? What some things you wish you would have known the first, like 2014, the first year that you started, um, and what advice would you give people that are like kind of making that step of like, all right, I'm gonna do freelance work. I'm trying to make this like a full time career type thing.
Sure. So to answer the first part, people who are just sort of starting off in videography, design, photography, really any sort of anything. This I feel like this advice correlates to because this is something that I learned. I think Casey Neistat had said this one time. He's a huge inspiration of mine for any sort of content creation. So
Mm-hmm.
he said, or if it wasn't him, it was somebody. I might be misquoting, but don't put 10% into a bunch of little things. Put 100% into one thing,
Mm-hmm.
and grow that, and then move on to another thing. So when I first started out, I put 100% into graphic design and I started learning that, but then became a little bit disinterested in it and became more interested in photography. But at that point, I was putting like 50 and 50 into that.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, it wasn't even that. So I was putting a little bit into soccer. I played soccer for all of my life. I was in school still. I had friendships to keep up with,
Mm-hmm.
family stuff to keep up with. So I was sort of putting 10% into a bunch of little things instead of just narrowing down and focusing on one thing.
Yeah.
So definitely important. And that's something I sort of lived by and tell, anyone that I meet when they ask me, what's the best advice you could give someone who's freelancing or someone who's just starting and wants to get into freelancing is to, not really put 10% into everything, but put 100% until you feel comfortable in that category and then sort of move on to another one to start putting 100% into. But you feel so comfortable in the last one that you don't really have to drop it completely, that you can keep doing it while learning the next one and still
Mm-hmm.
feel comfortable. So like I said, went from graphic design to photography, and now I went maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, from photography to videography,
Mm-hmm.
and I became so comfortable with my photo skills that I can comfortably keep doing that and move into videography. So I
Okay.
feel like that's really important because juggling a bunch of a bunch of different things, whether you are playing video games, trying to be a professional gamer, as well as doing content creation, which is also something I did at one point,
Yeah.
or I focused music for a little while as well. I wanted to get into music production, and just trying to balance all that stuff is extremely difficult because at the end of the day, you're never really mastering anything. You're
Mm-hmm.
just learning little bits and pieces of a bunch of tinier things. So
Yeah.
I definitely think mastering one thing before you move on to another is important.
Yeah, that's something I can learn from you 100% because I'm telling you right now, I am the most fickle individual when it comes to like I am impulsive to a
Yeah,
thousand percent. Like when I do get drawn to something, like I'm not saying this in a boastful way, I'm just being honest. Like I will learn it 10 times faster than the average person because I'm so laser focused on it. It's not even funny. However, I don't stay on it long. Like I'm like, oh, that looks cool. And then I like just like kind of take
yeah,
off.
exactly.
So learning to, stay 100% on something until you learn it to where you feel comfortable with it, I think is a big thing too. It's like, not only be 100%, but be 100% long enough to where you actually can gain headway in that whatever it is you're going for.
Exactly, and I think I can speak for both of us. We're people who wanna do it all kind of, right?
Yeah.
We wanna do everything. We wanna cover a bunch of different umbrellas and not just really stay in one place. We wanna, grow as much as we can, which is really with any person in the world. So
Hmm.
making sure you're comfortable with one thing before we move on to another is extremely important, in my
Okay.
opinion.
Awesome. And obviously, that answer honestly applies to even people wanting to do it full time. But for those people that maybe have been doing it for a year or two, 3 years, and they're like, all right, I've had a client or two. Like, I think I could honestly do this full time, or at least full time, maybe with a part time job on the side, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, what advice would you give to those people kind of making that huge leap into full time freelancing or full time media work?
Sure. So that big advice piece would be what I mentioned before. Don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. That's another big thing, just because you'll capture more atmosphere that way, and you'll
Hmm.
get better shots that way. But that's sort of the lazy answer. I wanted to take something a little more that was personal to me.
Hmm.
So I'd say talk to people. Talking to people is insane. And it sounds so simple, but it's also so intricate at the same time. Growing up in middle school and high school, I was one of the most shy people in the world. Obviously, nowadays we can all be keyboard warriors and we can all talk to people on Twitter.
Yep.
And that's how I got started. That's how I got a lot of my jobs, was just talking to people through, text logs on Skype, on Discord, TeamSpeak, whatever it may be. Um, but I never really made that leap of faith to like talk to people on a microphone until later in my life. And then that sort of grew me into being more outgoing than I ever was in my whole life. So working for people in traditional sports, working for someone like even Michael Bell, I'll give a huge shout out to Michael Bell. He really shaped me into the person I am today, without a doubt.
Mm.
He showed me so many different networking tactics, just ways to like conversate with people so naturally in this scene. Because at the end of the day, we're all, especially in esports specifically, we're all under the same umbrella, and chances are, someone who this person knows. So just
Mm.
opening a conversation about, you know, maybe a stream that you saw last week, or an event that you watched last week, you know, literally anything will be so much more helpful than you kind of standing in the corner of an event with a camera. Because while you're at these events shooting for, whatever team may have sent you out to an event, maybe you're going just for yourself. If
Mm.
you on the side, when like nothing's really going on, just whip up a quick conversation with someone, you have no idea who that person might be. That person might be the most important person in the room, in like the back office, that nobody else knows about,
Yep.
that you now have discovered because you were a little more outgoing than everyone else in the room, and that immediately gives you an upper hand in maybe getting a job, maybe getting a part-time job, full-time job, freelance, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
So really just talking to people whenever you get the chance to. Because if you go to these events and you don't talk to anyone, if you are on Twitter just sort of keeping to yourself, that's really a huge missed opportunity, especially in the content creation industry.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of what we are talking about earlier is like you said, like if I go to Seattle, Minnesota, and I'm talking to this random guy that just is like, hey, what are you up to? And like long story short, you can exchange stuff with him, and you find out maybe later that he's, the CMO of freaking the Atlanta Phase or something like that. And then fast forward 2 months later, you're like talking to this dude on Twitter, like, hey, I want to do this work for you. Like, what do you think? That guy might see that Twitter post and be like, hey, I talked to that dude in Minnesota. He's good to go. Like, talk, like, that guy's good. Like, talk to him. He's a good guy. Like, him, even just him saying that, like, he might not even look to your work, but the fact that
Yeah,
you made an
exactly.
impression on that person, like, hey, he's a good dude. Like, I talked to him, which be a good dude is like the best advice affiliate can give anybody in any situation. Like, if you're a good dude, like, your work might not even be the honestly the best option, but if you're a good guy, like people want to work with you.
Yeah,
So that's definitely a huge. I think that's a really good piece of advice, honestly. And like you said, it
yeah,
sounds so easy, but if it sounded so easy, everybody would do it. It's not easy. It's very
right.
hard, whether you're introverted or extroverted, personable or not. It is hard to go up and talk to people, and not only just talk to them, but talk to them with a purpose, but also make it sound kind of casual. Like there's so many intricacies to talking to people and networking as a whole.
For sure. And like to give a little story that sort of was an eye opener to me was 3 Januaries ago, back in 2017, before the 2K League was even, in their first season.
Mm.
I had went out to Cleveland with Patrick Broder because he had a couple interviews for the position that he's currently in now,
Yeah.
and I knew Patrick Broder before this, so we decided to link up with a couple other people and go to the Cavs Legion event that they were having that weekend. And I drove across Pennsylvania through Ohio up to Cleveland. It was like a 9-hour drive with one of my buddies, and that networking just from doing that, taking a long drive one day for a weekend, missing my first day of classes that semester even, um, opened up that position for me because
Mhm.
now, Helena had met me, Anthony Morocco, who was with the team at the time, who had met me. They put a face to who I was on Twitter that may have been interacting with them prior to that event. And they saw my work ethic. They saw how quickly, I could flip photos, I could flip video because I was also doing some work for them at the event just for free, just to, essentially try to get a job and just have some fun while I was there because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, content creation is fun for me. That's why I think any of us get into it because we enjoy what we do.
Yeah.
Um, so they saw my work ethic, they were able to match a name to my face, and they knew I was in New York. So as soon as the 2K League took to New York and they announced that they were going to be in Long Island City, Queens, that's where their main,
Hub
event
is.
area was,
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
venue, where the venue was. I reached out to a bunch of teams, and Cavs Legion were the first team to hire me from that venture. So I was extremely grateful that I went to that event, and that was something that I'd never let myself live down. I'd always live by that advice of just talking to people and just sort of getting out there, no matter who you are, no matter where you are. You can always hop in a car as long as you're old enough to drive, and
Yeah, exactly.
just kind of
Okay, yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think that's kind of a sounding board. A lot of advice that a lot of people in this podcast have been giving is just network, be able to talk to people, put yourself out there type. And I think a lot of people just, like we said, it sounds easy, but it's not. There's a personal side of things. There's just an effort side of things. Like you said, like you skipped a day of classes. I know Helena said that when she was doing the interview process, she drove 2 hours to Cleveland for a 15-minute interview to drive 2 hours back, and she was doing that twice a week for a couple weeks. She's like, they better. I was joking with her. I was like, they better hire you after doing that. Like, um,
yeah,
it's pretty insane that people that are willing to just go out there and do that thing. Like a lot of people aren't willing to do it. They won't admit it, but they're not willing to just like put in the effort to take that it takes in order to do that. To be
yeah,
honest.
it's daunting and it's tiring, and like the traveling will get to you, like Helena traveling 2 hours, a couple times a week, or like just to get this job. Like look where she is today from it.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
she's one of the best positions. I feel like I don't want to speak for her, but I feel like that she would have never thought that she would be where she is today. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Exactly.
Esports started out so small, and now it's just like this big, monopoly and this huge enterprise of what it is that I don't think any of us thought that we would be where we are today from it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so incredible that the time and effort, all the time and effort that we put in. I always like telling people this. I worked for 7 or 8 years for free to finally, be where I am and being able to work as a full-time freelance, esports content creator while also being in college.
Yep.
So really, about putting that grind in, and it may be a little more grinding than other jobs, but that's, I love gaming. I love, making videos. I love putting photos together, designs together. So, you got to do what you got to do to make it.
Yeah. Well, media is hard. Like you have to be able to do work for free and or cheap to get your name out there, get word of mouth, start spreading, and B, you just got to build a portfolio. Like that's definitely your lane is a lane that you kind of have to like go through the shit work a little bit. The only other way you could possibly do it is if you have a friend who's maybe really high up in the scene that already knows you, like a Patrick, but it's
Yeah,
like, hey, this guy doesn't have a lot of track record, but I'm telling you right now, he's good. Like, hire this guy, and maybe
yeah,
his
for sure.
his word holds a lot of weight, so you kind of skip those steps. But overall, like, you gotta do some pro bono work almost in order to get your name out there. It's just how it works, and it sucks. But
Yeah,
for you starting as early as you did, like at 15, 16, you're not worried about like making a crap ton of money. Like it's
exactly.
nice, but like you're like $500 at 16 years old is like 10,000 as a 25-year-old. So,
Absolutely.
um,
It's
to
like
be,
people who stream also, like
mm-hmm,
a lot of people who make YouTube content and stream who are starting nowadays really only see the money behind it and are only doing it for the money.
mm-hmm,
But people who, started when there was really no money behind it, those are the people who really made it big. Maybe it was a time thing as well and like included in that formula, but they did it because they had a passion for it, and that really shows.
mm-hmm.
I feel like stages of content creation in the back end stuff, making stuff for other people and making stuff for yourself.
Yep, I agree. Um, Yeah, man, that's amazing advice. I'm glad you're able to share that. And even at a younger age, like you're not that young. I'm 26. I'm talking like I'm a 40-year-old. But even at your age, being able to see the things you see is really beneficial. I think it'll help anybody listening to this is basically like, even at a young age, like you can do those things. You don't have to be a 25-year-old with a 4-year degree. Like you just have to be able to be willing to put in the work and start things.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, Patrick, I appreciate you being able to take the time to talk to our listeners. And hopefully they got something out of it. I know I did, so hopefully
Of
they
course.
got something out of it. Whether they're just starting or whether they're looking for advice or they're just trying to hear a different perspective. But before we go, are there any socials that you want to shout out, either yourself or people you work with? Anything? Go ahead and do that, and then we'll do our closing remarks.
Yeah, sure. So I'm at MaloneyMedia on everything. Everything. I only have Twitter and Instagram really that I go on. So MaloneyMedia, and my website is MaloneyMedia.net. If you want to check out my portfolio or anything like that, all of my videos and pictures, and I have a couple designs on there, but I haven't really been keeping up on that as much. So yeah, just go check out whatever. And if you guys have any questions on anything that like I touched on in the podcast today, you could always shoot me a DM, and I'll be sure to answer it.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Yeah, if you are listening to this on YouTube or watching this on YouTube, I will have all his socials linked below, as well as his portfolio. And then if you're listening to us on Spotify, like you said, Maloney Media for his socials, you can also go to mine, samajama.tv or Samajama TV for everything. And I will be promoting his socials as well. This will go live Sundays. So every podcast we have goes live Sundays. Not sure a specific time. It just depends on like what I'm doing because I also have a full-time job, but I always like to post them on Sundays on Spotify and YouTube, and hopefully we can be getting them on other platforms here soon as well. But Patrick, thank you so much for joining us, and I don't know if you have any closing remarks, and after
Of
that, we'll
course.
head on out.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. So it's
Yeah.
awesome.